I do.
Thank you, Natasha, for joining us so much. Like, we are huge supporters of Redefining Refuge and are so thankful that you're here with us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
But we'll just jump right in. Where were we?
I think you were asking about how I started doing the work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just tell us like how this even started, because I've heard the story and I thought it was amazing. Like, you had a great job, like a great job.
I did. Very normal one. Yes. Very normal one. So yes, I was working in finance at Smith Barney at the time and was doing really well. I was actually one of the top junior advisors in the country, just to give you an idea. So really just killing it, but also just very unfulfilled. So that's always what I wanted to do, was work in finance. And I was very young and I had the office that I wanted, and I had, the job title that I wanted and all the sales numbers that I wanted, and just felt super unfulfilled. And so I went to a community alliance meeting at the Children's Board of Hillsborough County, and they still have them. So I encourage everyone to go. It's the second Tuesday of every month. And I went there just to see if there was even a need. When you move to America from another country, you are under this assumption that it's America. Like, what could they possibly need? It's a first world country. They have everything together. And so I went to this very first meeting. It was in 2008. And they were talking about child prostitutes. And I didn't understand what that was. I've never had heard that terminology before. And so I just raised my hand and I said, well, like, what's the age of consent in Florida? Maybe I don't know, And they said that it was 18, which confused me even further, because how are children getting arrested for prostitution when they can't even consent to, anyway.
Right.
So the discussion kind of went on, and then I said, well, what do you guys do with child prostitutes then? And they're like, what do you mean? Prostitution's illegal. So we arrest them. And it's such a hard moment to describe, but it just like interrupted every single fiber of my being. Then I raised my hand again and I said, I want to make sure when I leave here, I'm not going to make up any rumors.
Right.
South Tampa is a really small place. I'm just going to make sure that I'm like not misunderstanding this. When a child that is being sexually assaulted sees a police officer, they are not there to help them. They're there to arrest them. Like, is this accurate?
Right.
And they kind of were like, why are you framing it that way? Prostitution is illegal. And okay. And so then I said, what if it was a foreign kid? And so they said, well, that's totally different. That's trafficking. And it was just the most mind-blowing moment, I think, of my life, because it's if you're a foreign kid, you get services. If you're an American kid, you go to jail. And I'm like, how is the world functioning that we're differentiating between children?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, what the heck? So I left the meeting, and I wasn't in social services, I was in finance. And so I just started looking up organizations, and I went to our Children's Advocacy Center and said, excuse me, do you guys know about that? And they said, yeah, prostitution's illegal. I'm like, okay. And went to, our crisis center, who does amazing work in our community. And I said, do you guys know about this? And they said, yeah, prostitution's illegal. And it's like, no matter where I was going, like, everybody was just saying the same exact thing to me, like, prostitution's illegal, prostitution's illegal. And so I just started doing a ton of research, and I found a girl in New York who really should be credited with like pioneering this entire movement. Her name is Rachel Lloyd. And so I find this girl in New York, and she's from England, funny enough, and everyone gets us confused. But so Rachel was a military kiddo and was trafficked.
Wow.
In America.
What?
Yes. And so.
Wait, how did you find Rachel?
Oh my gosh, just like researching online. Like, is there anyone else on the earth that like cares that American children are being basically sold for sex or being forced into prostitution? At the time, actually, I didn't even think about the financial component. It was more like, these kids are being forced to do something and then they're getting arrested. I'm so confused.
Right.
And so I find Rachel, and Rachel is, a survivor, basically. She had lived experience in this. And I mean, this woman is literally finding kids on the street in New York and putting them in a 1-bedroom apartment because she's like, they're not prostitutes. Like, I know what's going on with them. And so Rachel's on this bandwagon of trying to like reframe this issue. This is a human rights issue. This is, what have you. We end up finding like some counterparts in Miami, and they're kind of on the same trajectory too. Like, this needs to be reframed. And so this goes on obviously for probably 2 years of just like discussions with like the only 2 organizations that I feel like I can find. And then at some point during that, I started Redefining Refuge with literally a nonprofit for dummies book that my best friend bought me at Barnes and Noble. Swear. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to start this as a public awareness campaign because, I mean, people need to know. Like, I can't imagine that the general public in America would know that their kids are being arrested for prostitution, that they wouldn't be outraged.
Right.
Like people would be outraged, you know what I mean? Surely. So I started Redefining Refuge in 2010, and it was very poorly received. Very poorly received.
Yeah.
It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. Because
what were people saying or doing? Like,
well,
to me, I'm like, how could it be poorly received? Wow.
Well, so 2010, when the Facebook pages was still like the big thing. And we had an article come out on our Facebook page that said that Tampa was one of the worst places for children in terms of trafficking. And this was a study that was actually conducted by Shared Hope International in DC. Former Congresswoman went on a missions trip to India and did a whole bunch of stuff with human trafficking. And when she came back to DC, looked around and said, wait a minute, this is happening right here. I just went to India to do mission work, and this is happening right here. So another player kind of entered the platform and had done these research studies. And so we had our Chamber of Commerce at the time reach out to us and say, can you take your article down?
Oh my gosh.
Because they had an article that came out the same week that said Tampa was one of the safest places for children. Wow. And so you can see how this is like a massively conflicting narrative. And also we're a destination city, right? Like, we are a destination city. We have sports teams here. We have a beautiful convention center. We're, that's not good for business for Tampa to say, hey, we have a problem here with something really, really, really vile. And so it was not very well received at all. We spent 2 years doing these awareness campaigns, like anyone that would listen to us. We'd host these little events. How long have you guys been in Tampa?
My whole life.
Forever,
Okay,
yeah.
so remember Mangrove? Literally,
Yes.
even like a Mangrove. So like everybody, all of our friends come to Mangrove so we can show you a presentation. Like, I mean, just any forum that would have us. We were doing these little presentations just to spread awareness, essentially. And then the law changed. Some piece of legislation was drafted. The law changed. And so then this is great news, right? The law changes and it says children can no longer be arrested for prostitution. And that's great. Like, we win. Yay, my life can go back to normal now. And so, because I was still in finance this whole entire time. And so, great, biggest win. And then I remember, do you guys know Dee Dee Grundle with Joshua House?
No.
I'm sure we do.
A lot of your listeners will know
Yes.
Joshua House, and
I know Joshua House.
Right.
like, just a phenomenal program. And Dee Dee Grundle is one of the most special human beings that walks the planet Earth, in my opinion. And I remember getting a phone call from her, and she said, "What did you do?" And I'm like, what do you mean? What did I do? Like, this is so great. Like, we made enough noise for enough time, and we got to like red pen this legislation with one of our senators at the time, and the law changed. Like, that's great. And Dee Dee said, yeah, except that it's so hard to talk about still. She said, except that now kids are coming into our program and recruiting other kids out. And so it was like one of the most terrible unintended consequences that traffickers were basically sending older kids into these programs as decoys to recruit other kids out. And so, very good lesson, by the way, in you can think something is noble, but if you do it in ignorance, you can do a lot of damage. It's a very good lesson. Like, wow, this all I had was good intention, but look what happened. And so obviously I felt very responsible for, creating that kind of change with no services or anything attached to it. With like, oh, well, the law changed and now like everybody else deal with it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so I felt very responsible, like I said, after the phone call from Dee Dee. And so the need presented itself to open up a different kind of program. And so then I started doing all this research again, and you see safe houses for domestic violence victims. I'm from South Africa. Trafficking is not a new problem there necessarily. So there were already safe houses in, Europe or South Africa, or whatever the case is, for kids that do have this experience. And so, we just kind of grab pieces from everywhere, like what we think would work. And we created this program, and it turned into a very public political battle because they'd never licensed a safe house before. It was bizarre. So a reporter actually came to me and she said, I'm retiring. I wish I could find this woman. She said, I'm retiring and I just want to I know what you're trying to do. Can I do a story? And I was so ignorant at the time. You know what I mean? Like, you're young. What do I know about all the stuff? It's not my world. And I said, yeah, like you can do a story, but what is a story? Like a blue one. Yeah, I don't know what a story is, She put it on the front page of the Sunday paper.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was during like an election year. And every politician on the planet Earth was calling my phone, like Jeb Bush's office and this person.
Oh my gosh.
And I was terrified. And so I left the country and I went back to
You
South
did.
Africa.
She's like, peace out, guys.
I'm like, I'm going to get deported because I did something really terrible. So I'm just going to leave on my own because I must have said something or did something like really, really terrible because now I have all these people calling my phone. So I left literally the country and back to South Africa.
You didn't take any of those phone calls?
Sure did not. Nope. Nope. I did not. And so I went back to South Africa. And then while I was in South Africa, one of the House representatives at the time, Ross Spano, bless his soul, he sends me an email and he said, I just saw this write-up in the newspaper and I really want to start this legislative caucus in Tallahassee for human trafficking. Will you come and address the caucus? And I'm like, no, because you just want me to come back to America so I can get arrested for like treason or something. I don't know. No, I'm not coming back. And at the same time, actually, we had filmed a story in our safe house with somebody that ended up being a board member, a news anchor. And we have this beautiful house. It's on 10 acres in the middle of nowhere. It's furnished and ready for these kids, but they won't give us a license and they won't pay for it. And so he aired the story at the same time as I'm in South Africa and this newspaper article had come out. And so then eventually the state of Florida sent us a contract and they said, okay, we'll license the program, we'll pay for the beds. And then I said, okay. We had an attorney in South Africa look at all the paperwork. They were like, this is legit. You're not going to go. It's not a trap. And then that was it. I came back to America and addressed the legislative caucus in Tallahassee and then quit my finance job. So, yeah.
And your parents were like, what are you doing?
Oh my gosh. I mean, my dad especially was just extraordinarily supportive from the get. In the beginning, they were like, wait, you're doing what?
Mm-hmm.
Like leaving your finance job? Like, I was super lucky. They paid for my undergrad and stuff. I didn't, you know what I mean? And
right.
It was and I had a great job. I really had a great job. And so in the beginning, they were like, it's probably just going to be like a project. Right. You know what I mean? Like, okay.
She's so smart. She needs something extra to work on.
Yeah, until I had no money. And then I had to like move out of my place. I put all my furniture in the kids' house. And then I went to go live back with my dad.
Are your parents here? Or is your dad here?
He was, yeah.
Okay.
And so, and then I'm like, hey, hi, I'm moving back in your house. I have no job. I have no money. And just, uber supportive. Like I could never have done it without my dad's support and just an amazing village of people. And the people in finance too, that I knew, my clients were like, we know you're not crazy. This is crazy, but we'll help you. So.
Right. Yeah. Like at that moment when you're moving your furniture into, the safe house and you're moving into your dad's house, were you ever like, maybe I should take back my finance job? Like, or you were like, nope, I'm all in. Like, how am I going to make this work?
That's such an excellent question. So I did go back to finance for almost a year, actually. There's not a lot of women. Well, at the time, there weren't a ton of women that were licensed, you know, in that universe, I suppose. I was like one of 87, like there were 87 advisors in our office. 3 were female.
Wow.
Yeah. But anyway, so I did go back and we hired like a company to run the program because I'm not a social worker, you know, like, and then I was at the house one day with the kids and the people that we contracted, and I hated how they talked to the kids. Like they literally talked to them like they were trash.
Oh my gosh.
And then
Seriously.
and then I lost all of my Jesus that
Oh.
existed inside of my soul and fired everybody on the spot. Like literally was like, get the bleep out of here. And then I was there with 3 kids. And then that was really it.
Wow.
That was it. Yeah.
So I don't think people realize like what a problem it is here. Like you said, like we go about our normal lives every day and
Right.
you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Like you have some statistics like for either in America, in Tampa, like around trafficking.
So I always say, obviously, you know, 1 child is too many. It's 2024. And the fact that human beings are being sold for profit is just, it's egregious, you know? Florida is ranked 3rd in the nation for number of calls to the human trafficking hotline. So I do want to stress that. Like people will say, oh, we're ranked 3rd. We're the 3rd worst. We don't actually know if we're the 3rd worst, but we are the 3rd in terms of calls to the hotline. That is also because we were one of the first states that started to reframe the issue, that started to provide services. And we have just like really, really skilled law enforcement partners in terms of being able to identify it. You know what I mean? And so I think that we're just a little more skilled at recognizing the issue and then reporting the issue. And that's probably why we have higher numbers, but we do have an extremely high prevalence, unfortunately, of cases. Our agency in this last fiscal year had 131 kids on our caseload, and that's just Hillsborough County.
Wow.
That's not, you know, the state of Florida.
Right.
Wow.
So
That's a great way to frame it though, because you could look at us as worse, but really we changed legislation, right? We're kind of lifting up the covers or
exactly.
right? So maybe
Right.
that's why.
And I want to tell parents that because I feel like there's a lot of fearfulness around the topic, and that's never what we want to do. Like we're not trying to instill fear in our community or into our parents. There's so many viral videos that actually hurt the movement so much. Like, I mean, I've seen them all, of these influencers making videos about trafficking that are just like so stereotypical and just so nonsensical, honestly. And then it makes parents like terrified.
Right.
So I will say that less than 1% of child trafficking cases in the United States are abduction related cases.
Right.
So I want parents to know that. In other countries, it's a lot more prevalent where kids are being abducted. Here we see a lot of coercion cases. So we have a very big problem with social media. Huge problem. Cannot stress that enough, of all the grooming and coercion that's happening on social media. And then we have a big problem, I told you guys earlier, with familial trafficking, where it's a parent or a caregiver that's trafficking their child for substance use issue. So, which I never expected, obviously, when I started doing the work. Like, who thinks your parents are going to do that?
That social media piece, what can people do right now, like who are listening, who have kids, and that definitely like pushes a button when they hear that. What can they do to help their kids not be groomed on social media? Like what are there any tips? Like maybe just not have it, like, right? I don't know. What's the answer to that?
I mean, I would love to tell parents to tell, you know, oh, your kids can't have it. But if you say no, they're going to use it at school on their friend's phone or iPad or at their friend's house. Exactly. They're going to find ways. So I think the best thing to do is to openly communicate with children. We do tons of trainings actually with parents and PTAs on social media specifically. And one of the things that we tell them is just communicate with your kids that no matter what goes on social media, they can come to you. You're not going to punish them. So here's what happens. If somebody approaches your child on social media and they tell you as a parent, parents generally freak out. And what do? You take the device away, can't have it anymore. So now your child just got punished essentially in their eyes for something that they didn't even do wrong. So they're not going to tell you. So I think one of the conversations that we have just a lot of success with is if somebody approaches you on social media, that's not your fault. You're not going to be punished. I just need you to tell me, you know what I mean? So we can revisit how we're using it or whatever the case is, but keeping the dialogue open. And then also letting kids know that I hope that they're not sending pictures on social media, but it's so common that kids are sending pictures on social media, and then people extort them for all kinds of things when they're sending pictures. And so as a parent having a conversation, if you sent a picture, whatever they are asking you for, still come and tell me. Like, what that person's going to do way more harm than the trouble you're going to get into from your parent. You know what I mean? So really it's just keeping the lines of communication open. The majority of kids have been approached online by people that they don't know. It takes seconds really to be approached online. So it's a very big problem for us.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're going to say something.
No, I was going to say one other thing. Like in our generation, mostly, I feel like the generation that are parents now, the way that we were raised was like stranger danger, right? Like, oh, stranger danger, all these campaigns for stranger danger. And so I would just caution parents to reframe it for themselves. If your child has any electronic device, an iPad or an iPhone, there are tens of thousands of strangers in your house at any given moment. And so you need to reframe, like, that's the stranger danger.
Right,
it's
yeah.
the electronic device. It's not the person. It's a lot of people on social media.
Right.
So
That's true.
Thank you for those.
Yeah.
Stephanie's ready to go home now. And
Yeah.
Well, I know I like what you said too about like not taking the device away, because that's your first instinct,
Yep.
but it's more about educating them, and
Yes.
it's okay to keep that communication open.
Yes.
This stressor or that you want to emphasize.
Yep.
Throughout this whole journey, which, wow, like what a learning experience. Like you knew nothing about it to like just having your eyes open and then starting this, and then like it's been huge, like everything that you've had to do and go through to like create this. Is there anything that you would have done different? And what, other than like your initial like eyes opening around the issue, like what did you learn throughout the whole process? Like,
Wow.
there's probably a million things. So
I mean, I don't know that I would have done anything differently. You know, it's so funny. We were actually having this conversation yesterday, and I said in the beginning of all of this, I was so outspoken. Like I was so grossly outspoken because it was wrong. It was just like unjust. And then now it's more difficult to be as outspoken because we are responsible for the 100+ kids on our caseload. So it's like, if I'm as outspoken as I used to be, would they be the collateral damage of my words? You know what I mean?
right.
And so I don't know that I would have done anything differently at the time, other than listen to the kids sooner. Changing that narrative for myself, like I can give their voice a platform, but I am not their voice. You know what I mean? Like I'm just listening to them essentially. And so, I mean, the success that the program has had, it's always, I say, because of the kids. Like, how can I pretend to know what's best for you when my life experience was not like yours? I didn't, none of my life was like yours. So how can I tell you what you need? And so, I mean, really, he's like, Mom, let me in. He's a good communicator. I like
He
it.
is.
That's right. You
Yeah.
advocate for yourself.
The voice.
He's advocating for himself. So yeah, I mean, I think just listening to them sooner instead of to all the noise, I wish I would have done that, because it was what they had to teach us was gold.
Yeah.
And it's still like that. Like our program is informed by them. So
That's amazing.
Wow.
That's really smart, right? Listening to them, because the program's for them. So why not
right.
know what they need?
Right.
And listen to what they need. That makes so much sense.
I remember when we had our safe house, we did a chart, like a chore chart, or like a schedule. Actually, it wasn't even a chore chart, it was a schedule of like Monday through Sunday. And so I'd gone to like the dollar store and got like all this craft stuff and glitter pins and stickers, you know, all these fun things. Like, okay, girls, like we're gonna do a schedule. And every single one of them ran away. And I was so upset. I mean, I was just like, what the heck, you know? And they came back, thank God. And they were like, that's too scary for us.
Why? Oh, they probably have.
Well, because everything is so unknown for them. Like they don't even have a day where they know what to expect in a day. and I'm trying to map out the next 7 days was just like, it was very scary for them. They were just like, it's too much. It's overwhelming. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of times kids would hoard food because they know the next meal was going to come from, you know, those sorts of things. And so I said, okay, like, what if we do a schedule just every morning for the day? And they said, okay, you know, and until they trust you a little bit more. So it's very, I mean, honestly, I learned more from them than I've ever taught them. Like, honestly, yeah.
I would never have guessed that either, because you would think that you would want to know what's coming.
Right.
Yep.
That's interesting.
They didn't want to know. And also, like, they're very terrified even now. Like, the kid, we've been doing this for 14 years total now, but even the kids now, like, every day they just wait for you to do one thing that is, you know, not aligned with what you said you were going to do. Like, they're waiting for you to disappoint them. And so when you have a schedule, it's just like, I think for them, it's like you're speeding up the disappointment almost.
Yeah.
So yeah, consistency is huge for them. Like,
so you don't have the house anymore.
Nope.
So how are you now running Redefining Refuge?
So I think people should know why we don't have a safe house anymore, because a lot of questions come in about that. So, you know, the movement became extraordinarily politically hijacked. I will say that. I'm very comfortable saying that. And so people make, you know, rules when they don't fully understand the problem. And one of the rules was, well, children should have a say in whether or not they go to a safe house program, which is interesting to me, because how do you take a traumatized 12-year-old and expect that they have enough autonomy to make a decision about where they should go to process their trauma? And so anyway, so that started happening, and the level of referral started to change as well. So you know, we have an issue sort of in our whole state, really, with kids being able to be placed in certain places. And so the law changed. So in the beginning, when for it to be a human trafficking case, you had to say it was fraud, force, coercion, harboring, transportation. And then they changed the law, and the law says that any child that is having sex in exchange for anything of value is a trafficking victim. And then sometimes, too often, we were getting reports where it's like Susie, who's 16 or 17, you know, was having sex with her boyfriend who's 18, and then they smoked weed afterwards, and now Susie's a trafficking victim. Susie's not going to come to a safe house. You know what I mean? Like, there's no normalcy there. It's like a intensive 24-hour, you know, program. Anyway, so we decided to make our services mobile, actually. And in the first year of doing that, we went from serving 7 kids to 93 kids.
Wow.
Right. That's what we said.
Very much
Whoa.
impactful, right?
But whoa, why? Because the majority of the referrals that we were getting were for community kids and not for foster care kids, which was a huge misconception even for us. We thought that the majority of the kids that were being impacted in our state were kids that were already in foster care. Not true. The majority of reports at the time were for community kids, which means, let's say mom or dad has a substance use issue, they're the ones that are trafficking their child. Grandma or grandpa or an aunt or an uncle might be willing to care for the kids, which is great, right? So they never come into the foster care system. But now grandma and grandpa need a whole set of tools to be able to parent this traumatized child. This child needs services that maybe they cannot afford. And so we just started making our services mobile and taking them to wherever the kids are. Like, you're in detention program, you're in a diversion program, you're with grandma, you're with an aunt, you're with a non-relative. Like, how can we wrap people in services that are caring for our kids? And that's just been it's been hugely beneficial. Safe houses are very expensive to run. There's very few left. Bless the ones that are still fighting the good fight in the residential component, because it's not easy. But for us, it was just to make the biggest impact was to make our services mobile.
That makes sense. I love that.
I mean, it was weird. It was like, wait, it took so long to start this thing.
Right.
Now I'm gonna leave it. What?
Yeah.
That was tough. It was tough, but it was the right thing
Well,
to
it's
do.
interesting to hear the progression of the organization and the impactness. Yeah.
Ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
Yep.
Whenever you started it in 2008, did you have any idea that it would be where it is today?
Oh my gosh. No, honestly, it makes me just like every year that I do the work, I get like more and more humility in my heart for like what it is. You know, it's like it's got its own whole spirit, the organization. Like it's so well supported by our community. We just have the most awesome village, you know, it's extraordinary. And no, I had no plans for it literally other than a public awareness campaign. That was it. There was nothing ever on my radar in terms of creating a program or just nothing. But now I would never do anything else. Like I still get
Right.
offers to go back to finance.
Oh my goodness. That is hilarious.
And then I'm like, no, you know, absolutely. Like I just have no interest in that anymore.
Right.
So
Well, it's probably good that you have that background to be able to handle the finances and like that piece of it, the business side of
Yeah.
the nonprofit, right?
yeah, I mean, it's like nothing that you do in this life is ever wasted. I feel
Right.
like all these strange things that you did. Like when I was in college, I taught art to kids, and I loved it, you know, or like I taught Sunday school to second grade. And then it's just funny how all of these weird,
Comes
different
around.
things that you've done in your life, like come into this culmination of like, oh, here's why, you know? So, yeah, it's cool. It's funny. I went to my old office like a few months ago and a lot of the same people were still there.
Really?
And yeah, it was just such a weird feeling being in there because they were like, you're absolutely insane, like to leave. You know, at the time they were like, you will be a millionaire by the time you're 30, like you're crazy. And so it was funny. I went there and a lot of the guys were still there. And it was the coolest feeling ever because, you know, all our fundraising efforts, we opened an account there. And it was, yeah, it was awesome. It was like, well, here's all this money we raised doing the thing that you told me I was crazy to be leaving for. So it was just a cool full circle.
Right.
Cool, very cool full circle moment. Like, okay. This is wild, actually.
Yeah.
Share. So another really cool story that you started sharing with us before we were recording was the, what do you call it? Not episode, like the case study with the FBI. Was it FBI? Who was
The
it?
U.S. Marshals.
U.S. Marshals. What do you call
Oh,
that? Is that a
yeah.
case study or project or?
So it was an operation, actually.
Operation.
So it was called Operation Seminal Saber. And it was just a giant missing child recovery operation in the month of April. So April's Child Abuse, you know, Prevention and Awareness Month. And yeah, we worked with just all of our collaborative law enforcement agencies. So it was, you know, the U.S. Marshals, FDLE, St. Pete PD, Tampa PD, on recovering like our county's most endangered children that were missing. A lot of them were trafficking victims. Baycare was a huge partner in that operation as well. And it was hard. It was the hardest thing actually that I've done in all the years of doing the work. Yeah.
And how many children did
they recover? They recovered 27 kids. And we've never been part of anything like that before. So we come in like post recovery. And so to be involved in the recovery side, it was so humbling. I will say, hopefully I get better at this before the gala, but law enforcement totally changed my life. Like I've always had tremendous respect for what our law enforcement does. But I always thought it was more transactional than it is. And seeing the way that our law enforcement interact with these kids and them still being in the hospital with us, like, you know, it's like midnight and we're still in the hospital with these kids and you peek out the door and law enforcement's still sitting outside. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not like their job's done as soon as they recovered the kid. And they interrupted my life so much. I think this is the second biggest interruption that I've had since I started the organization. That's probably why I'm so emotional, but they changed the whole theme of our gala. So our gala is going to be about celebrating all of the heroes that make our organization possible, not just like highlighting the efforts of the work that we're doing, but truly the phenomenal partners that we have. I mean, these people were unbelievable to me. I mean, they would be there with us until 1 o'clock in the morning and they'd be reporting for duty at 6 a.m. again, you know, like, okay, let's go get these kids. It was unbelievable. And I told them, I said, like, if I didn't know all the things that you guys are doing, our community doesn't know. And like, I need them to know, like, I need them to see what I saw because wow. it was unbelievable. So, I mean, yeah, it was extraordinary. I never expected it, you know, like, yeah, as an example, they recovered 4 missing children at once, and they were all very little, and they needed car seats.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and you don't, and all these law enforcement are at like the command post in our office looking for car seats. You know what I mean? Like, no one in the community thinks that our law enforcement is like, we need to go get these kids. We need car seats. Where can we get them? You know what I mean? It was just like, oh my gosh, what? Like, I'll go buy you 4 car seats right now. Like, I'll go to Target. It was just, I mean, the things they do are unbelievable. Honestly, it touched me so much, so much. Yeah, and like I said, they're so amazing with the kids. Like, I just thought it was more transactional. Like, okay, we picked you up, you're in the hospital, but that's just not what happened. And then obviously our kids, I mean, we just saw some of the worst things that I've ever seen in 14 years. Like, there's a lot of people in our community that are just doing a lot of really terrible things to kids, you know, and to see the kids just come out of an abandoned house, and the way that they look, it's crazy. Like, there's no words for it yet, you know, and we're just coming off of this, so hopefully, yeah, I don't know that the emotion of it would ever wear off though. Like, I don't like to see kids in that shape. It was nothing that I could have ever expected, even after doing this work for as long as I have. No.
So is that operation because it was like the child abuse prevention awareness month, or is this something that you're going to do more of?
So it was actually a U.S. Marshals operation, and they invited us essentially to be a partner in their operation, but they've done these. So they did one in Central Florida, then they did one in our region, and I believe they're going to start doing them. We would love this to be an annual operation that we're doing in Hillsborough County with our law enforcement partners. I think we all learned a lot. Like, we've never done anything like this in our county. So I think all of the agencies that were involved, of course, us included, we all learned a lot. Hopefully we have the same team going forward, because it's great to build with the same team. But yeah, it was their initiative. I mean, we just have a lot of missing kids in this county. I don't think people understand. Like, if you go on the FDLE website and you look up Florida in general, or you narrow it down to county on Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, it's unbelievable how many kids we have missing. Like, and people, we need to find them. You know what I mean? Like, they're missing. They're either running away from something or they're running to something. And our job is to figure out which one and what we can do about it, you know? So
we need to have all that stuff linked to, like, how can people find that, and then how can they help, right?
Yep.
Help the cause.
Literally, I was driving in Seminole Heights. My dog's groomer is in Seminole Heights, and I'm not kidding you. Just from going on, like, with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, just from going on there, and obviously we're looking for our own kids, but I found 2 missing kids in Seminole Heights in the middle of the day.
And what do you do?
What were they doing?
They were with a man that was obviously not their parent. They were panhandling. So I was watching them. This guy was sending them into different businesses along Nebraska, like having the kids ask for money. The kids were totally disheveled. It was during the day. They should have been at school. So plenty of signs, right? And it was interesting to me because I watched it. I obviously called it in, you know, and said, hi, there's 2, you know, even if they weren't missing kids, there's 2 kids, they're under the age of 10, they're not in school, they're dirty, and they're with somebody that's forcing them to panhandle. Like, that's trafficking. And so I watched them for a while, and it was interesting because dozens of people gave the kids money, and no one's going like, it's like 10:30 in the morning on a Tuesday. Like, why are these kids not in school? Why are they dirty? Why are they pushing around a stroller full of like weird stuff, you know? But TPD did come and they handled that situation. Yep. Yep. So
yeah, I mean, just hearing you say this, it will raise my awareness. Like, if I were to see that, like, something's not right with the situation, we need to do something about it. And like, to where I would want to call. Whereas before, like, I don't know if I would have, because you assume, oh my gosh, he's driving me nuts. You assume that if he's with an adult, but it's like a parent or a,
Right.
But
You
yeah.
definitely assume that, or at least I do. Cause you just,
I think people also don't want to get involved, right? It's like you don't want like to stick your nose in other people's business or whatever the case is. But it's like if you're wrong, then like who cares? You're wrong. But if
Right.
you're right, like you just save
those two
little
babies.
kiddos. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, and so I'm glad that you said what you said and the way that you just said it, because this is an issue that is in plain sight. It is not something that is like hiding in the darkness. It's in our plain sight. It's just that we're not identifying it,
Mhm.
you know.
So if like we were to see something like that, do you call like 911? Is there like a certain number to call?
I mean, if you see something, you know, that requires that level of emergency, then I'd call 911. But in that situation, we just called the non-emergency sheriff's office the non-emergency number, because that's not going to be a 911 for them, right? So,
Right. Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
But I wouldn't get involved by any means. We always tell people, like, don't get involved. Even if you if you see something, just try to keep eyes on them. That's what I did until TPD came. I haven't followed the bus that they got on, for the love of God.
Really?
Oh my
Yes.
gosh.
Because I'm like, I don't know where they were going. I'm like, well, they're on, and called them back. And I said, I called earlier, just so you guys know, they're on a bus. This is the tag of the bus. If you need to, when you guys get here, if you need to pull over the bus, like that's the bus that they're on, because I don't know where they were going.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah.
Wow. I feel like people need, this world needs more people like you in it.
Yeah.
You
No, I
are-
think the world needs, like, we have the most amazing village. I'm telling you, like, I'm one person, but like I could never do what I'm doing without just amazing, amazing people. Like, I'm telling you, some days when I'm just like, it's exhausting, obviously, to do the work. Then we'll get like just like so much kindness and love from our community. Like, we need all of us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, everybody does something different, but we need all of it. Like, honestly, it's just like, that's really kind of you, and I appreciate it. But I mean, we need all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like the boss bite you said, and that's what we call tips. Right? I really like how you shared, you could be coming from a good place and trying to do something good, but if you're ignorant about the situation, that's not going to help. I really love that.
Mhm.
Like, really, do the research and make sure you're fully aware, and if ask questions, right?
Right.
No question's a dumb question. I really like that piece.
Thank you.
What's next for Redefining Refuge? Is it more operations like the one you just had in April? I know that was really tough on you, but what do you see in the future?
I mean, I think that we have to get back to our roots, which is we have to start changing more legislation. It's interesting. Like, this movement is kind of how domestic violence was 30 years ago. So it was very taboo. No one talked about it. And now look at how extraordinary of a movement that is. So our movement's kind of going through those same growing pains. It's like we created legislation, got some good momentum. Now we can see all the ways that legislation is no longer working in the best interest of our kids. And so I think we have to go back to the basics of just being very outspoken about these are very massive areas of opportunity in our legislation that are impacting kids extraordinarily negatively, and they're antiquated, and so we need to fix them. So I think that's my main priority. Obviously, aside from the kids that we serve, I just get nervous that the capacity in which we're serving is going to stop being enough if the framework doesn't change.
Right.
The framework's got to change.
Right.
So that's our goal. Obviously, our end goal is to go away and hope that kids don't need programs like this in the future. Like, truly, like,
Right.
what an awesome day that would be if we closed our doors because kids didn't need us anymore.
Right.
Like,
That would be
that would
beautiful.
be extraordinary.
Right.
Yes.
And
So,
what does Redefining Refuge need the most? Do you need volunteers? Do you need donations? What's the best way for everyone to help?
I have a giant ask. I need people to be foster parents. That's what I need. And if you can't be a foster parent, then I need you to please be a guardian ad litem. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the guardian ad litem program, but it's an extraordinary program in Hillsborough County. I'm sure it's a national program, in fact, but our Guardian Ad Litem program, if you go through the program and get training, you're basically appointed by the court and you can advocate in the best interest of the child. And I mean, our Guardian Ad Litems are like angels on earth. We could never do our work without them. And so that's what we need. Like, we have so many kids in this county that need help and so few of those kinds of people. Like, so truly, those are my biggest asks. Guardian Ad Litem, if you're thinking of being a foster parent, please, 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 please be a foster parent. Some of our kids need homes to go to instead of going to group care, you know? And so those would be my two biggest asks. And then us as an organization, like, we need things that all kid organizations need. You know, our gala's coming up September 28th. So we'd love our community to attend and support in that way. And then we need gift cards. We'll actually be doing an event in July. It's our All Hands on Deck event for World Day Against Trafficking. It's going to be a giant back to school drive. So we need back to school supplies. We need gift cards. So we always just need, you know, all the things that you guys need for your kids. We need
Right.
the same things.
One last question, because you had the ask of being a foster parent, and a lot of people have children already, and they're probably wondering, okay, how do I bring in a child that has had these issues and they're going to be paired up with my children right under the same roof? Like, how does that work? How do you even prepare yourself? Is there something that they can, I don't know, learn about or read about so that they can be okay with that, or they can prepare for that?
That's such an excellent question. And you're just such a good parent because you were thinking of that.
I am.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So number one, I love that you put your own children first. Thank you for doing that and thinking of your own kids' well-being first, because that's the absolutely right thing to be doing. In a perfect world, our kids would be fostered by a family that doesn't have small children in the home, and that, you know, their kids are out of the home. That would be the perfect scenario, just because obviously there are things that can go wrong. And so we don't want other children being traumatized in the process. But at the same token, you know, we do get kids that just the most healing that they get comes from the other kids in the home. You know what I mean? So it's just got to be the right kid and the right parents. And so obviously people that are in charge of those things, I'm the vice president of the board of directors for the Heart Gallery of Tampa, and we do matching with kids and families. So this is a plug for both. So, I mean, they do extensive training. You have to go through licensing and a home study and all these things. And so if you're getting matched with a child as a foster parent or as an adoptive parent, obviously we're doing that with a ton of due diligence. So, but beautiful question. And I'm so happy that you asked it. Yeah, seriously. It's like, yes, put your own kids first.
Yeah.
There's a lot of do-gooders and then they put their own kids on the back burner, and that's not fair.
Right.
So such a good question. Yeah.
Love it.
Well, this
And-
conversation has been very enlightening for me. I haven't been to any of the events, but I know because Ash and Gina and I have, you know, so many people that have gone. It's just, I think I don't have girls, I have boys. So it's like, I kind of felt like, you know, the mommy and me tea is like, oh, well, I have boys, I can't go. But the gala, like, I would love to go to. I would love to like get involved in. I think it's such a wonderful organization, and
Thank you.
so wonderful what you've done. And just bringing like light to the subject, like making people aware of it, like what's going on. So thank you for
It's
sharing.
like I just broke your heart, Stephanie.
You did.
It's like looking at me like I need a drink. Oh my gosh.
No, I feel like I you know, want to do something, you know, it inspires me, like what you've done. And it's just like, wow. So thank you.
Yeah.
For sharing your story and sharing about redefining refuge, because people need to know about it.
Yeah. Yeah. They do. They need to know about our kiddos that are often, like I said, just hidden in plain sight. They would never know.
So we're going to share all of your links and how to get involved, how to give, or some information too on what people can do
Okay.
to help.
I appreciate that.
Of course. Well, thank
Thank
you.
you guys.
It's been
Thank
awesome.
you. This has been amazing.